I'm so grateful to have you here at The Reset. This is an opportunity for us to learn together how to pivot, how to get through losses and anxieties and realizations that we're finally waking up to the need to move in a different direction, even though we may not know how to take that first step. This is your space to think about who you are and what you want and learn from people who've been there, because every moment somewhere in the world, somebody's going through a reset. And today, Peter Lawson Jones has a lot to say about this. You may have seen him recently starring beside Tom Hanks in the movie A Man Called Otto. That kind of star power, I know, may make a lot of you think, what a storied life he must have had. But Peter learned how to reinvent his life several times over, from actor to student to politician and then back to actor again. So when we started our conversation, he immediately shared this quote with me. This is a quote that pushed him through those transitions and one he still clings to for motivation.
It's very powerful and unfortunately expresses succinctly much of the human condition, that most men live lives of quiet desperation. They're unhappy, unfulfilled. Their life doesn't offer psychic, mental, emotional rewards. They feel rather empty, oftentimes because they're not pursuing their natural gifts. They're not pursuing their passions. They're not excited about their 9 to 5. And so I've always tried to be somebody who's avoided that predicament, who doesn't feel desperate, who doesn't feel unfulfilled and unsatisfied. And that could be a challenge for very, very brief periods of time. Probably when I was in law school, because law school was a means to an end for me. I did not enjoy the vast majority of classes. I enjoyed most of my peers and most of my fellow students, but the actual day-to-day of being a law student, particularly because I had lived in Washington, D.C. for 2 years on my own, working on Capitol Hill, working for the Carter Mondale presidential campaign, and then on the transition, and then with a political appointment to HUD. And you know, politics and government has always been a central part of my life. I mean, I majored in government in college. So being there in my early 20s, that was exciting. So I go from that to law school, sitting in a classroom, studying antitrust law, something I knew I was not going to practice, taking accounting for lawyers.
So wait a minute, if that wasn't what you were going to practice, why were you studying that?
Oh, well, I knew,
that was just a class.
I knew when I was 13, there's certain classes that you had to take.
Right.
Certain prerequisites and required courses. And I don't know if I actually knew a lawyer well enough to know what they did until I was probably well into my teens. But when I was 12, 13 years old, I knew then that I was probably going to go to law school, because I had a good sense of my skills. I thought I was good at writing, speaking. So what do you do with those skills? In a family that prizes and values education, and in a family that wanted me to do more than they were able to do because of the limited opportunities that they had as African Americans in our country growing up in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Just like I knew when I was 10 years old, I wanted to either be a professional baseball player, an actor, and a politician. Not because I had politicians in the family, not because there were actors in the family. Now, my dad played in the Negro baseball leagues, but there were no professional athletes who were playing in the major leagues as I was growing up that I knew and had access to. So, yeah, I think if you're honest about those professions and those activities to which your soul responds, you'll find your way to those, to the professions that allow you to enjoy, again, your natural gifts and things that you're naturally excited about, that you can wake up every day and do and not feel that you've done a minute of work.
So can you identify, when you look back, a time in your life that was a reset that changed everything for you? There have
probably been several. Mm-hmm. And you can't live as long as I have and not have had several of those moments. I think the vast majority of people have.
Yeah.
You know, if I were interviewing you, I'd ask you the same question. I'd be very curious as to what your
I'd say
response
the same
would be.
Several.
Several. Perhaps the most significant was back in 2010. I was a county commissioner at the time, and I thoroughly enjoyed 20 of the 22 years that I served as an elected official. The last 2 were marred because of scandals involving my colleagues and other county-wide officials in Cuyahoga County. And the media scrutiny that we were under, the pressures that we faced on a day-to-day basis, with everybody being a suspect until proven innocent. It's almost like guilty until proven innocent, guilty by association. You know, the assumption was because we served with people who engaged in corrupt activities that we knew about them, and nobody stopped to think that when somebody's doing something bad, they don't tell anybody else. The only people who know are those who were engaged in the conspiracy and in the activity with them. But that was kind of the public perception. And so as a result, the voters changed the form of county government. So after running for a term that would have lasted 4 years, mine was cut in half. Now, fortunately, I had started acting a couple of years before the end of my term as a county commissioner. And we're sitting here at Karamu, and this is the impetus, this is the place where the impetus from what ultimately turned out to be a transition from politics to performance occurred.
Did you know that was that your intention?
Not at all.
Okay.
I didn't act for almost 3 decades, and I thought it was completely out of my system. I could go to a movie and not dream about being the actor on the screen. I could go to a play and not think about playing one of those characters that I was observing perform in front of me. But I joined the Karamu board in 2004, 2005, and I had written a play in college. It was the first of the 3 plays that I've written. And they had a staged reading series every spring. And so I asked the then executive director at Karamu whether or not she would consider putting my play in that stage reading series. And she said, sure. And the play drew a good response, so they ended up giving it a full production right here at the Karamu main stage. And so I've always said my plays are like my 4th, 5th, and 6th children. I'm working on a 7th. But that 7th, please.
The play,
my wife
not the
is
child.
watching, right, please. Lisa, I'm not thinking any more children. So I would be here every night watching it. And I became friends with the artistic director, who was often leaving rehearsal, and he would see me standing at the back of the theater watching the play as though I had never seen it before. And he through our conversation, learned that I used to act. So he offered me an opportunity to be in a stage reading, simply reading the stage directions at Cleveland Playhouse when it was at its former location on Carnegie Avenue. And Ruby Dee and Bill Cobbs were in this production. I said, oh, you mean I'm going to get a chance to occupy the stage with them? All I have to do is read stage directions? Well, sure, I'll do that. So after that experience, he said that there was a play that he wanted to mount at some point, but first wanted to do a stage reading and inquired if I wanted to play the lead. And I thought about it, I said, sure, why not? Because stage readings are simple. You don't have to memorize any lines. There's no costuming. There's no props. It's just you and the page, and you're reading lines, hopefully with expression. That's one of the things my mom, who was a public school teacher, taught me. Always read with expression. And that has served me well in everything I've done, in law and politics, and certainly in
parenthood,
acting.
right? Because when you're reading a book to a child.
Right. Oh, thank you. So in every facet of my life, that's perhaps the best piece of advice that I ever got. And I got many great pieces of advice from my parents and from others, but that really has laid the foundation for everything that I've done subsequently, to be able to do it effectively, to be able to effectively communicate. Well, that's what it really is.
And you've got the booming voice to go with it.
Well, that's kind of you. I owe that to my parents, and my only responsibilities are to preserve it and to use it for powers of good, not evil.
Yes.
So Terrence asked me, did I want to do this other stage reading? I said, sure. And after I completed that particular a project, I just had the desire again to act. It
So
was
what do
really
you-
those experiences.
What do you do with it at that point? Because, like, take us to where you were
Okay.
and that pivot, because there are people who are going to be watching this who are going to be thinking, I'm ready to pivot, and I don't know how to do it.
Well, this was 2008. And again, I was still a county commissioner. I did my first play in almost 30 years, 15 years ago this month. Wow. And it was simply, well, right then, I didn't realize it was going to be the career pivot that it's turned out to be. To me, it was simply something to supplement the rest of the activities, primarily focused on politics, in which I was engaged. So I didn't recognize it at that juncture as a reset.
What's interesting is you saw the opportunity and you took it, though.
Absolutely.
Because there
I
are a
knew it
lot
was
of
something-
people
yes.
that will see an opportunity and they'll question it. For whatever reason, whether it's fear, whether it's financial, whether it's, I don't know if I can do this, or, you know, everybody has their own reasons.
And most of the time it's fear and the desire to be secure, and stepping out on faith is a challenging thing to do. It's more easily said than done. Because all of us have practical considerations in our lives that we have to give attention to. We have to make sure that the bills are paid. We have to make sure that the family is fed. We have to make sure that the mortgage is paid. So you can't always take a certain amount of risk. But I will say this, that if you have the requisite amount of talent for whatever it is you're passionate about, and you have the work ethic that's required, then you can make a go of it. And you've reduced your risk, and you have a much greater chance of success if all of those elements are in place. You have to have the necessary amount of talent, once again. But if you're willing to work hard at it, the same skills that I applied to my career in law, to my career in politics, to what I do now as a consultant, I've applied to acting and the performance arts. And it works. It also helps to be a person that people enjoy being around. That creates opportunity. Certainly if you're a bit of a diva, then nobody's gonna wanna work with you. Because it's interesting. I find that what I'm doing now is harder than anything I ever have done. And because there's so many subjective factors that are involved in acting and becoming successful as an actor. You know, and things over which, this is what's key, things over which you exert no control.
Right.
If the director is looking for somebody of a certain height, if you aren't that height, nothing you can do about it. They're looking for somebody with a certain look. They're looking for somebody who looks like they would complement the rest of the cast, or that they could be one of the members of the family that's being assembled. If you don't fit those descriptions, there's nothing you can do about it. You can be too short, you can be too tall, you can be too thin, you can be too heavy, you can be too muscular, not muscular enough.
How do you take that, just as you said, that this is just something that's out of my control, as opposed to some people who, a lot of people, especially when we're living in this society where we're comparing all the time, would take it as rejection?
Thank you, Internet. Thank you, all social media platforms.
But I mean, that would be rejection to some people more than it would be an understanding of, I just don't fit this bill.
It's the dominant challenge for anybody who's in the performing arts, particularly as an actor or a model, where you're assessed on certain physicality, and where talent can sometimes be secondary. And there was time in my life when I wasn't willing to accept a level of rejection, where I would have taken it personally. I think politics for toughening me up, number one. But the other thing is, when I graduated from law school, I rejected offers that I had with firms in Cleveland and in Los Angeles, because my initial intent was to go to New York and devote my time to acting and to playwriting. So I auditioned for it. I happened to be home that summer because I just graduated from law school. I wanted to pass the bar somewhere, be officially a lawyer somewhere. And so I returned home, and lo and behold, they're having this audition at Karamu. I had never performed at Karamu. Maybe I'd seen a play or two there. I'm not necessarily certain of that. So I auditioned, and my audition went well enough that I was invited to the callback, which means you're one of the final handful of actors who are under consideration for a particular role. I didn't get the role. And I said to myself, I'll be darned if I'm going to move to New York and knock my head up against 2 or 3 hard walls simultaneously. Mm-hmm. See, instead of seeing the fact that an institution that was that venerated, that it produced extraordinary actors during its history, I didn't see the fact that I had been invited to that I made it to the callback as somebody who didn't have a plethora of acting experience. That was actually a victory, but I didn't see it as that. I saw it as a humiliating defeat. And so I abandoned my immediate plans and my thoughts for 3 decades of acting.
So when it came back around, Peter, did you have a moment where you thought, wow, this is it?
Well,
or no?
After I did those first 2 stage readings, I decided to audition for a play in Karamu, and Terrence Spivey happened to be directing it, and I was cast. I went through the same process of all the other actors. I had to prepare a soliloquy, and I practiced that, rehearsed that, and that was my monologue. So I was kind of all in. I was going to go through the process that was required, and did so, and it turned out well for me. But then the kind of unexpected happened, because initially my hopes were to do a little voiceover work and to do some stage work, but I began to interact with other actors who had advice for me, and then there were opportunities that presented themselves. I was doing a play out at Weather Vane Playhouse in Akron, and in the green room in between scenes, one of the other actors told me about an audition that was taking place the next day for a movie that Corbin Burnson had written, was producing, and was going to direct in Akron. I went to that audition, and one thing led to another. After that taste of film work, I wanted to do more. And so I followed the advice that I give young people who come to me who want to know how to succeed in virtually everything. That is to network hard and then work even harder. So I began to network, and I took it very seriously, and then all of a sudden, you know, I raised my expectations, level of expectations, the horizons, and fortunately things have worked out fairly well. But I'm still at the point where I have to audition for virtually everything. I'm fortunate there are some projects where the directors work with me before, they've heard of me, they know of my work, and they'll say, I have this role for you to play. But I still have an audition that I have to submit in the next couple of days. You know, so it's still a challenge, it's still a bit of a grind in its own way, and you can't get away from that. I'm not at Tom Hanks' level yet. where vehicles are created for me.
You're next to him, so you're getting there.
I'm closer. I've certainly been in close proximity there too, at least of close physical proximity I've been to Tom Hanks, yes.
So how did you get yourself through your reset? Because like you said, there are moments where you felt humiliated and you felt like this was just maybe the wrong thing.
Oh, and even after I started acting again, I can remember there was a period of about, I think, a year and a half, where I was making it to callbacks. In one case, I made it to a second callback, so I knew it had to be down to like 1 or 2, but to just a couple of actors at that point. And it was a major film, The Ides of March, that came out a few years ago. Interesting political drama, but so that was a very rough period of time, which I thought, well, I'm going to give this up. I'm getting close, but there's no cigar. I think there was even one occasion where I'd gotten a role and then the project didn't move forward. So there were these series of close but no cigars, kind of setbacks that were extraordinarily frustrating. So you think, am I ever going to get over the hump? And then the only things that can sustain you are faith in your ability, knowing that you have, at least skill-wise and talent-wise, what it takes, support from friends and family, and the knowledge that what is going to make you ultimately happy and keep you happy and content is pursuing that which you are passionate about. So you have to have tremendous amount of belief in yourself and in your dream and in your goals.
And what do you do in those moments where you don't? Because we don't always believe ourselves. We're not always on that same threshold. There are a lot of dips into that valley of uncertainty and insecurity.
You just keep pushing. You just keep going.
It's a choice.
Absolutely.
It's a choice to say, I'm just not going to give this up.
Absolutely. You shouldn't give up on your dreams. I mean, that's what distinguishes you from the people who are living those lives of quiet desperation. So in those moments, your family support, the relationships you have with family and friends is critical. Your belief in yourself and in your own talents and in a higher power is absolutely essential. And to have that belief in your dream. Something that you know that if you give up on it, that your life is going to be a shadow of what it otherwise might be. And there's one other thing. So many people have quit just before the gravy train arrived. And I never wanted to be one of those people. I would think, boy, if I stop now, then the next opportunity, that golden opportunity I've been working for, positioning myself for, is coming right around the bend. You know, that light at the end of a tunnel is really the dream getting ready to manifest itself. I mean, as an elected official, I lost elections. You know, there was a frustrating period of time for me there. I think from 1990 when I lost a very hotly contested race for the state senate, 1994 when I was a Democratic candidate for lieutenant governor, and we lost that race, the gubernatorial candidate and I. So there were times I could have given up on my dream of being an elected official in a position to really make a difference in the community and in society. As a lawyer, I've lost cases. And that's why the quality of resilience is important in whatever you do, because you're going to get told no. The only people who never get told no are those who don't aspire to do much of anything, who don't challenge themselves, who don't put themselves out there in vulnerable positions. And that's the other thing I think that helps you, is you realize that we all fail at something at some point. I think it was Thomas Edison was asked after a failure to invent, yet another failure to invent the light bulb, after he finally succeeded, they said, well, weren't you frustrated by the hundreds of times you failed? He said, no, those were 100 times that I succeeded in learning how not to do it. And I really think I really think that kind of perspective is necessary for all of us, because if you look at defeats, when I lost the state senate campaign in 1990, I sat down and wrote a list of all the mistakes I had made in that campaign. And I vowed that in any future campaign, I wasn't going to repeat those mistakes. I might make new ones, but there was not going to be a reiteration of those kinds of failures. And so that also talks about the need to be accountable. And so when something goes wrong in your life, the first thing you have to think is, what could I have done to have achieved a better result? You can't think, oh, what external forces caused my failure? You know, who can I blame it on? You have to first start with yourself. And John, that's the best place to start. And you will generally find, if you do an honest assessment, a candid assessment, that there's something you could have done better.
And it doesn't mean you are fully to blame.
No, no.
But it is a teachable moment. It is a learning experience for yourself.
Generally, in any success or failure, there's a partnership between a number of internal and external forces.
I love that saying, don't let failure go to your heart and don't let success go to your head.
And even now, to your second point, I feel very blessed and fortunate to have a significant role in a film opposite Tom Hanks and scenes with Tom Hanks. It's wonderful. But I'm already thinking about what's the next project. You know, when can I play? You know, this summer I'm going to be fortunate enough to be playing the lead in a beautiful feature film, independent feature film that's being shot in Cleveland called The Last Shop on Walnut, in which I play a rather complex character who owns a small business, and the business is beginning to fail, and the neighborhood is changing, and his relationships with his family have broken down. And so I'm excited about the opportunity to play a lead role, to be in the position to carry a film. So there's always something more that you can do, something better. I'm not one to rest on my laurels or get overly excited about what I did yesterday. It's funny, I was referencing this recently. There was a record by Janet Jackson called What Have You Done For Me Lately, right? Mm-hmm. And life pretty much doesn't allow us to rest on what we did the day before, or a month before, a year before. And that's because I always want to continue to build legacy and to stay relevant. And you can't stay relevant if everything you've done that's noteworthy occurred months and years and decades ago. You're no longer relevant. You're no longer part of the discussion.
Why is it important for you to be relevant?
Oh, perhaps it's driven by my ego. Perhaps it's driven by my desire to somehow claim that which is inescapable, which is a certain form of, well, my legacy is definitely driven by trying to be immortal, to live forever, beyond what the 70 or 80 or 90 years that are allotted. And I think you create legacy through your family. The first place you create it is through your children. Yeah. The second place is through perhaps items, objective, tangible items that you leave behind, a poem that was written, a play that was written, a film that you're in, a book that you wrote. Your interviews will live on. And that's something that your progeny and successive generations will be able to see and watch, and they'll have a sense of you. And the third way is through how do you impact the community and society around you, those people who aren't family members or close friends, but you've done something to lighten somebody else's load. So I know that desire to be immortal, to have that kind of legacy that outlasts me, drives me. And to be relevant, again, that's a bit of ego. I always want to be part of today's discussion, not yesterday's, but today's. I don't want people to wonder. I don't want those articles about me. Whatever happened to?
Yeah. Where is he now?
Where is he now? I don't want that.
He's right here.
Yeah, right.
He's right here.
Right here in this moment. So that's and also it's not just ego, but it's also the desire and the impulse to be a part of something important that's happening in the moment, to not be on the sidelines, on the bench, but to be on the field.
Like many people, they just want to know their life mattered.
Absolutely.
Isn't that it?
And legacy and relevance equals a life that has mattered, and that continues to matter and to reverberate in years to come.
So you said one of the keys to when you're in the moment of a reset is to just keep going.
Yes.
Right.
And you can pause and reset long enough to assess yourself, your circumstances, and your dreams, your skill set. Nothing wrong with that. but then move forward. Don't hesitate. And do so aggressively and with full confidence. But if you don't have that belief, and this is why, when I was an elected official, both on the state level, I offered the legislation that created the Ohio Commission on Fatherhood. And when I was a county commissioner, I established the Cuyahoga County Fatherhood Initiative. Why? Because I know the difference that it made in my life to have two loving, nurturing, engaged parents. And I think the faith that I have that I can achieve whatever I set my mind towards, and that nothing can deter me, that the only person who can keep me from self-actualization is me, I know that those seeds were planted by my parents who made me feel loved. And by feeling loved, I knew that I mattered and I had value. And if I mattered and have value, then the world will see me as such. If they did, then it's possible for the world. But if you don't have that, then how can you think that you're worthy when the people who should have made you feel worthy didn't?
Unworthiness is like a disease at this point. That overwhelming feeling of not being worthy of whatever's out there. Because if you don't feel
of
worthy
love,
for it,
of a good job,
you're not going to go for it.
Of accolades, right.
No,
you won't. You'll retreat. Why would you? Why would you expose yourself to more pain if that's what you think the world is offering?
But you did.
Yeah, but I was, again.
You had that foundation?
I credit, this is what I often say. I say everything good in life that I've done or may do in the future, I owe to my parents. Anything bad, I figured out on my own. And so I realize how blessed and fortunate I am.
You know that, right?
I hope so.
You're a
I hope my
parent's
parents
dream
of blessed
you would
memory
say that.
would feel like that.
Because there are a lot of people that grow up and say it's because of my parents that I'm screwed up.
Oh, God. That's a good point.
It could be true.
It could be true.
They're not taking anything away from them.
And then so I think that I had fewer mountains to climb than many because of the support and love that I received from the very first moment of life. And those things are the comfort and security that I receive from my parents allows me to be a little more daring, a little more adventurous in terms of what I've undertaken in life, because both politics and making your way in politics and making your way in acting are challenging.
They have probably got to be two of the hardest careers to navigate and keep your feet on the ground.
Yes, I would say that. And it's kind of amusing too, because on the other hand, a lot of people think that they can do it. Everybody thinks I could run for office and win, I could be a comedian, I could be a movie star, I could be a singer. They do. They think that they could be a news personality, that there's nothing to being an anchor. There's nothing to having a successful talk show. Oh, I could talk, I could ask questions, right? And but those of us who are on the battlefield know a little bit better than that. That it's not at all easy, and we just have to be grateful for whatever we have internally or whatever we've received from the universe over the years, that we feel confident in our ability to succeed. Somebody recently asked me the question, and I think it's relevant to this discussion about resetting and reinvention and renaissance. How do you know which invitations from the universe to accept? I'd never been asked that question. And you have to, number one, you have to be open to receiving the invitations. Right? You have to see them as opportunities. And then you have to see which of those invitations resonate in your soul and in your heart. You can't just follow any invitation. I get invitations every day to join different organizations, to attend certain events, to moderate a discussion, but I'm looking for those things that I feel reverberate and connect with what's the deepest part of me.
So people might be sitting at home going, well, what does that reverberation feel like? How do I know it is authentic as opposed to, as we were talking earlier, checking something off the list that I can put on Instagram and look like I'm really important?
And you're right, because of all the social media platforms, it is harder to distinguish the truth from what's purely superficial pretense. Well, I personally will get the right invitations, bring a smile to my entire being. That you almost feel yourself exclaiming, yes, that's it. You know that feeling from, and distinguish it from, oh, okay, right? There's a big difference. You know I bet when you met your husband, it wasn't, okay.
Yeah.
There was more of a connection than that, I would hope. We're on camera now. You better say
You got
that was the
right.
case.
No, that is 100% right. 100% right.
Right. You know the feeling you had when your first child was born. Boy, that resonated deeply in your every fiber of your being, that joy. So when you feel that joy, you know that's an invitation worth certainly exploring, if not just outright accepting. And if your feeling is meh to this invitation, it's probably not the one that you need to accept or invest the majority of your energy and attention.
Don't live in meh.
Yeah, right. Don't live in the meh world. Live in the yes.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm on the Oprah Winfrey show with your questions.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, because she has these very profound discussions, and that's
very
what we're
nice.
having right now. A very serious discussion about trying to figure out who we are, and we continue to be works in progress and trying to figure out what makes us tick and what makes us happy.
One more question for you. At 70 years old, as you are now,
Well, first, let me say that I am absolutely certain that the Bureau of Vital Statistics made a mistake and that there's a clerical error on my birth certificate.
Listen.
It is not possible that I'm 70.
every time that somebody complains about their birthday, in my mind, I don't always say it to them unless there's somebody that I could say this to, is, I have a mom who has cancer who would kill to get to her next birthday. So let's just embrace every one of them, right?
That is absolutely true.
Let's just embrace every one of
I'm
them.
enjoying my time on this plane.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
I
to
want to get to
somebody-
80, 90, and 100.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
And to somebody who feels like it's too late, to somebody out there who's thinking, I want to do whatever it is that they want to do so badly, but they think, I'm this age or that age, or I have this against me. How do you overcome that moment just to even take, as they say, take the first step, even if you don't see the staircase?
Think about it. What do you have to lose? Even if you fall short, you can feel good about yourself for the effort, for the courage and valor it took to take that chance to live your dreams, to follow your passions. That in and of itself is a reward. I mean, you don't, and think when you're facing that moment, you don't want to 5 years later be that person to say, what if? If I had only tried, if I had attempted it. I'll be honest, the bus has passed me by and left the station in terms of playing professional baseball, right? I'm going to be a professional athlete, not at this stage and not after having had both of my knee joints replaced. That's not going to happen. But for all of us, hopefully we all have multiple dreams. And yeah, time might have passed us by for some, but certainly not for all. I mean, people look at yourself, think about the skills, think about what gives you joy and pleasure, think about what skills you have, And there are people every day who are taking skills that might seem innocuous to others and they're converting them into successful businesses and successful lives.
Somebody said to me once, what do you love to do? And you realize 4 hours has gone by and you didn't even realize it.
That's the point. You want to be there where work is anything but, where work is pleasure. That's the point we're all trying to arrive at. And that's why I feel so fortunate during my life, because I enjoyed the 22 plus years as an elected official. I'm enjoying a ride which is now 15 years long as an actor. I'm looking forward to having a few quiet moments where I can complete my 4th play, and then I've got ideas for 5th and 6th plays. I even have another objective for when I'm in my 80s. I would love to be a member of the Foreign Service. I'd love to be an ambassador somewhere. And see, that's the thing. I'm always thinking again about what's in the future, what's on the next street, what's behind the next door, you know.
Okay, one last question,
Sure.
since you brought it up, because you are always looking ahead. And I always joke that I plan and God laughs, because that's happened to me a million times
Of course
in my
it does.
life.
Of course it does.
But if you're always looking ahead, how do you make sure you are securing your presentness?
And enjoying the moment?
Yeah.
I think the two are not mutually exclusive. There's no reason why you can't relish what you're doing right now, but still think about what lies ahead and what the next steps are. Because there's time and moments for reflection. And in those moments of reflection, you look forward. The month of January is named after the god Janus. And the god Janus has 2 faces, one that looks back and one that looks forward. And I think we should look back to figure out what we could have done better. And also, it's okay to enjoy great successes in the past. Just don't languish and get stuck there, you know.
And think that is all there was.
Right.
Right.
And that the was is all that there is to be. Right. So, so you don't want to get stuck in the past, but it's okay to think about it because it can be instructive in terms of the present and the future. I wouldn't have, whatever I've achieved in life, I wouldn't have done so without some strategic planning and thinking. And what is that? That's looking ahead. That's looking far down the road and plotting out how you can get there. You know, some things happen extemporaneously and spontaneously, and you have to improvise. But I think most people who've enjoyed success in life have had a plan.
Thank you so much for sharing some time with us and watching The Reset. Do stay tuned to WKYC Plus for even more conversations on starting over and looking forward. We're looking forward to seeing you next time.